Start the Zoom recording and live stream. Your meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Waddell. Welcome, councillors. This is our first attempt at a full meeting. We're isolated. If anyone feels ill, please let Mr. Waddell know. Actually, as we have at the moment, you have the option of attending here or you can still Zoom. So hopefully everything goes right. Before I start, I'll call for any apologies first.
There are none.
Just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Please be patient. Electronic meetings are difficult face-to-face. Can I just ask you too, Councillor McRae's on Zoom, so please make sure you talk into your microphone so it can be picked up by Councillor McRae also. So the council meeting is being live streamed and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to be live streamed and recorded. Please ensure that if and when you speak at this council meeting that you ensure you're respectful to others and use appropriate language at all times. Orange City Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. A recording will be made for administrative purposes. I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land. I would also like to pay respect to the elders both past and present of the Wiradjuri nation and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians who may be present. Does any councillor wish to declare any conflicts of interest in any matter for consideration at the council meeting?
Councillor McRae.
I do.
Yeah, Councillor McRae.
Yes, I've got a significant pecuniary interest in infrastructure related to item 2, the traffic report, and that's on item 3.4, the changes of parking, as I'm a business owner in that area.
Thanks, Councillor McRae. Did we get that recorded?
Yep, got that recorded. And then this one.
Thanks very much. Councillors, item 4, under notices of motion, notices of rescission. So item 4.1, that's withdrawn. Just note that in your books, just turn over. So that's item 4, notices of motion, notices of rescission. 4.1, that's withdrawn. Okay. There are no speakers this evening, I believe, for a council forum. There are no Merrill minutes, but Councillor Romano.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, it's been a horrid couple of weeks, as you all may know. I'd like to ask for your upstanding to pay respects to Councillor Kidd's mother, Jane, who was born on the 29th of August 1930, entered into eternal life the 31st of July 2020. Thank you, councillors.
Thanks, councillors. And can I just say, on behalf of Kerry and myself, can I thank all the councillors who contacted me personally. I thank you very, very much. It's very, very much appreciated. And Mr. Waddell, ask you to thank all the staff. Kind words and support. Tough, but my rock, but have to come to an end.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I'd ask you to stay upstanding. The second person probably doesn't need much of an introduction. The passing of Mario Privatera, born on the 25th of April 1967, passed the 1st of August 2020. He was 53. I can honestly say I'd never met a gentleman like him. Very softly spoken, super intelligent, and would help everybody. I never heard him speak an ill word about anybody. He loved his position as a councillor. He was a genuine gentleman. I'd like to have a 1 minute silence for him, councillors, if I may. Thank you, councillors.
Councillor Romano, just Councillor Privatera's funeral is tomorrow.
Tomorrow, councillors, tomorrow at 11:30 at St Joseph's. I know there are restrictions on, but I think it's going to be available space external to the church, and a PA system, I understand, is going to be put in place. I think it's going to be fairly popular. I don't mean that in disrespect, but I think the friendship that this gentleman created over his lifetime, amazing. So yeah, if you're available at 11:30 at St Joseph's. And further to that, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a motion from the floor. If someone would second it for discussion before I speak, Councillor Munro. I think a memorial for Mario should be put in place. I've written down 3 options. Option 1, Pinnacle Road Reserve, which is next door to his place at the Pinnacle. Option 2, Gosling Creek. He advocated for camping there for a long time. Option 3, the stop and rest when it gets built on the Bathurst Road, is another passionate item that he was always talking about. Thought it was a great thing for Orange. Now, I don't expect, or I don't particularly want any councillors to vote on this. My next part is to ask the CEO to submit these options, if everybody agrees, to his remaining family, which is his sister and his brother, and ask them to choose an option, come back to council. If everyone's in favour of that,
Everyone happy with that?
Councillor Romano, I spoke to you earlier, as you know, for a bench, you're saying, yeah.
I say, I should clarify, councillors, a memorial would be a concrete seat, a large stone with a brass plaque, a large rock with a brass plaque, or something to live for his future friends or for his
Not
friends.
renaming of parks.
We're not going to rename
No, I just
park,
want
but I
to
think,
clarify that for the live stream.
yeah. So if I have your support with that, I'd like the CEO to send that through to his family, remaining family.
Quite sure. Is everyone in favour of that? Just showing. Yeah.
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much, Councillor Romano. We move on to item 3.1, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 21st of July. Move Councillor Hamling, second Councillor Munro. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Council meeting will now adjourn. Now, we're moving seats or staying where we are? I think
we're in a position to stay.
Where we're sitting. Is everyone happy about that?
Yeah.
Fine, thank you. First of all, we have Planning and Development Policy Committee. Councillor Turner.
Mr Mayor, I opened the Planning and Development Committee, which was deferred from last week, which one good thing out of that, I wasn't going to be here last week. I'm here this week. So firstly, in declarations of pecuniary interest, we have one that's at 2.4 from Councillor McRae, was it?
Yep.
I was in the Traffic Committee, Mr Chair.
In the infrastructure. Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure, couldn't quite pick it up.
yeah.
Right, okay. So we have no pecuniary interest at this point. We have no apologies. So I go on to 2.1, items approved under the delegated authority of council.
Move those, Mr Chairman.
Second it, Mr Chairman.
Councillor Whitten, seconded by Councillor Munro. Any discussion? Items? No items of discussion. I move that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Unanimous. 2.2, development application for 7 William Maker Drive. Been moved by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Whitten. Any discussion? Councillor Nugent.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Look, just a very question, really. There's been some concern expressed to me about sediment control, various developments. Most developers do the right thing, but in some cases, things might slip. And given that there's some contamination on this site, as in the arsenic, other heavy metals that are there, and there's a remediation action plan proposed, and given that there's a drainage reserve running through the middle of the site, I was just seeking some reassurance that the sediment control provisions that we've got in place will be sufficient to keep it under control, and maybe just stepping through how that development will play out. I think there's 2 different stages, so I was just interested in what goes into each of those different stages.
Thank you. Mr Hodges.
Through you, Mr Chair. Certainly the sediment control across sites is very important. We have staff, our environmental health officers that are active and have been over the last sort of 18 months enforcing sediment control. It's important to keep an eye on or acknowledge the fact that a subdivision site looks a bit different to a standard house block because they're smaller and they can have more controls around a house, so you'll see more. Subdivisions themselves, a bit like the ones you see back on the distributor road, you can drive past and see very little. They rely much more on detention ponds in them that catch the gross pollutants, and they settle them out, decant the water, and they treat it that way. So there's a general combination, but it doesn't look to the eye as much as what there is on a building site. So that's why those subdivisions that you see look a bit different. Really doesn't mean that and the same across the road where we're doing the roundabout. You'll see slightly different things there, but similar principles to protect against pollution. The standard conditions in that development consent recommended there are adequate to address the contamination potential, both from the rehabilitation of that sheep dip, but also the general contamination of from soil sediments moving from the site itself onto our road and also into the creek. So there's the adequate controls there, which come under the Protection of Environment Operations Act. It's just pollution, they can't do it. So, and our Technical Services Department manage the subdivisions, and the environmental health guys get onto the building sites once they start building the individual houses.
So just a follow-up question, the contamination work will happen sort of obviously first before much major earthworks occur?
Yeah, and the subdivision doesn't get released until that work's carried out, and then a certificate of clearance given, so a validation report. So it's a particular document from the environmental scientists where they test the soils, keeping in mind that sheep dips are quite constrained. The contamination generally doesn't go too far from, so they're reasonably easy. We've had a number of them around the city over the years as the city's grown. So I'm confident that they'll be able to manage that. But it is under the guidance of a environmental consultant specialist.
Thank you, Councillor Nugent. Thank you, Mr Hodges. Any other questions? Okay, I'll put that motion. Did we move and pass it? I think we, yes. Put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried again. Go on to 2.3, electronic lodgement of planning applications on the New South Wales Planning Portal.
Move the
Moved by
recommendation,
Councillor
Mr. Chair.
Nugent, seconded by Councillor Munro. Any discussion?
Just, Mr. Chairman, if you
Councillor
can
Duffy.
would it make the DAs go through a little bit quicker?
Through you, Mr Chair, we're certainly hoping it will. It's with the reliance more on electronic instead of messing around with plans, we should be able to help a little bit there, so it'll improve on our referrals. So other councils that have implemented this already throughout the state have found that they've decreased their average assessment time slightly. So, and that comes out of partly with this process. We're really taking the comb or redoing our processes and make sure they're as efficient as they can be.
You're looking at a 7-day turnaround.
Oh, look, I'm not going to commit to that one, Councillor, but I'm hoping to get it down, certainly.
Any other comments?
Councillor Turner, if I may,
Yes,
look,
Councillor
I
Gibb.
may suspend normal protocols for this evening that you don't have to stand when you're speaking. Might make it just easier for the live streaming. We're in a different formation. So forth. Is everyone happy with that?
Yep.
So you don't have to stand when you're speaking, okay? Yeah. Sorry,
Okay,
Councillor Turner.
no other question. We'll move on to 2.4.
Got to move it, haven't we, Mr.
Happy to move that, Mr. Chairman.
Did we vote
We've
on?
got to put the vote.
Councillor Nugent.
We've got to put 2.3 to the vote, don't we, Mr.
2.3, sorry.
Oh, didn't I do that? Right, my apologies. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. 2.4, development
Happy to move it, Mr.
applications.
Mr. Mayor?
Move it.
Chair.
Moved by Councillor Duffy and seconded by Councillor Nugent. You don't have to stand, but you can if you like, Mr. Duffy. Councillor Duffy.
Just used to standing. got to watch what's around me.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm quite happy. I want to move the recommendation with this says here with the approval with minus delete dot point 4, which is the $7,000 for parking.
0.4.
Through you,
I
Mr
second
Chair.
that. That's a deletion of the contribution.
61, councillors. Condition 4, payment of contributions.
Is the seconder happy with that
No,
amendment? Not, right.
I'll second it.
I seconded. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you can if you want.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, in saying that, I mean, it's changing of the manager's residence into an accommodation room, and the manager's residence has a parking space there already, and one would assume there wouldn't be any great difference there. And I just common sense, as far as I'm concerned, is there's already a parking allocation there for it, so I can't see it making any difference whatsoever.
Mr. Chairman, may I? I'll just put my hand up if I want to speak. Look, I'll speak in support of that motion. Amendment, sorry. I suppose the Section 94 in defence of the staff, this has always been a dicey one when you do changes of use, where you've got to have look at the parking requirements, and I suppose this one sort of makes a little bit of sense at the fact that there's already a parking spot there that's going to be utilised by, going to be changed from the manager parking in that parking spot to a tenant parking in that. So I think it makes a little bit of sense to do it that way. But the staff have to follow the Section 94 stuff and allocate extra parking.
Councillor Munro.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to speak to that as well. I think Orange Council seen as practical, and as we try our hardest, I think it's so important common sense prevails, and I think it's a fair go. Fair enough, if it was a major change or a development, It's just a renovation of a room that's already there, which has already got a contribution paid for a car park. No, I think, it's relevant that we don't take money, especially when businesses are doing it tough, where we think it's practical not to.
Councillor Nugent, are you speaking for the motion or against the amendment, or?
I'm really asking a question about process.
Oh, okay.
So this is a request for a review of the decision that has previously been made. It's not a modification to the DA. Is that right? Is that correct, Mr.?
Yeah, that's correct. So it's a view, in effect, questioning the process or the outcome of the determination of delegated authority to which declined to have, required the payment of that contribution. So the application was originally approved with the inclusion of a condition that did have the payment of contributions, and they asked for the matter to be reviewed. Question of, did we do it properly in the first place?
So then the staff, I understand, have reviewed it and have said, yes, we made the right decision in the first place. So the recommendation is actually to confirm the previous decision. So I'm not sure whether the amendment is actually the appropriate amendment. Should it be that the council does not confirm the previous decision?
Excuse me.
That was I agree. I think the amendment is right. But Councillor Duffy moved the motion.
The motion with the amendment, with the deletion of the confirmation of item 4.
It's a motion. It's not an amendment.
It's a motion.
Amended motion.
Deletion of item 4.
So if I could, Mr. Chair, I mean, it is okay what you're doing.
Yep.
And I think that is valid, that the amendment is disagreeing with staff's review and you're seeking to effectively change your determination. Would you agree, Mr. Hodges, before I...
Certainly under 82A they can take that
decision tonight.
Disagreeing.
No.
Oh, true, yeah.
Yeah.
A review of a determination goes to the next level up. So this was done under delegated authority of the CEO, and so with our recommendation, and so that's why it comes to you, because you're the next level up in delegation. And our assessments, the applicants didn't provide any additional information to justify the case, so that's why we stayed with, yes, certainly there was a car park, that room, or the manager works there, so it is actually... So for consistency with motels, that's why we've done it.
So the manager will still be working
Yes.
there.
Not
and
staying overnight.
That's right.
taking a...
We would assume then that he, as a staff member, would act under his same directive to all parking in the council car park. Is that correct? He's indicating there somewhere that they all park in the council car park.
Park behind it, said.
Yeah.
There's a council car park nearby, yes.
We assume he will do the right thing.
Yeah. So just, sorry to be difficult, but can I clarify what the recommendation, what we're actually voting on then?
Well, the amendment is with the deletion of 4.
I think that it doesn't talk about, the recommendation doesn't talk about the condition.
How about...
Sorry to be difficult.
How about, Chair, I make the motion up words now.
We'd read them.
Before you just simplify it, Mr. General.
Yeah, could I simplify it? I think it might be something that council council determines DA 4/1/2021 for hotel accommodation at Lerner as per the previously issued notice of determination attached with the deletion of condition 4. Full stop.
Councillor McRae had a hand up.
Sorry, Councillor McRae.
That's all right. I was just wondering, is this actually affirming the DA, but basically council not requiring the parking contribution to be paid?
That's the intention of the amendment, yes.
So in other words, the decision by the staff is acknowledged as being correct in the assessment, but as we've done with the number of developments, particularly relating to accommodation developments, we are not going to charge the parking contribution, which is consistent with other ones that are close to council car parks, and that we'll just draw that out of other funds rather than having any contributions going into parking funds. So it's almost a separate matter. It could be assessed that the previous decision made was correct. However, council will not be charging the parking contributions.
Which is actually half a car space at this point, yes, $7,000 odd. Yeah.
I think the
Which
wording,
we've
the
done
wording
many times for change of use.
Does everyone understand what the amendment is?
Yep.
We've got no further discussion. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour?
Actually, the motion.
Those against? It becomes it's been approved, so it becomes the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Councillor McRae? Yep.
Yep.
The motion is passed. We've got now point 5, if I can find it. 2.5 development application 80 Summer Street. It's been
Happy to move
moved
the
by
recommendation.
Councillor Nugent and seconded by Councillor Duffy.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like the Director of Planning to brace himself. I'm going to praise the staff on this occasion. I think it's one that we've, over the last few years, we've learnt to work together. Not only it's a win-win situation for the developer, it's a win for the council staff, and it's a win for the councillors, this one here. And it shows a hell of a lot of common sense where we went through this process when we looked at a gym over there in the side of the railway line there somewhere. And I think it's and I applaud the decision of the staff for this one too.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. Any other comments? No other comments. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor McRae, you got your hand up, or are you voting against it?
No, I do now, sorry.
Right. Unanimous.
Unanimous, yep.
That brings the Planning and Development Committee to a close, and I call on Councillor Miletto to conduct the Employment and Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'd like to open the Employment and Economic Development Policy Committee meeting at the time being 7:28 p.m. Declarations of interest. Does any councillor have any peculiar interest, significant non-peculiar interest, or less than significant non-peculiar interest in this matter, on these matters listed for consideration at this meeting? There being none, we go to section 2, item 2.1, minutes of the Economic Development Committee.
I will move.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a mover by Councillor Kidd and a seconded by Councillor Romano. Is there any discussion on this item? Thank you. I'll put the motion. All for, please show your hands. All against? Carried. Item 3.1, updated spend map data for COVID-19 restricted period. There is a recommendation on page 22. Do I have a mover?
I'll move that, Councillor Miletto.
Thank you. I have Councillor Kidd mover, seconded Councillor Nugent. Is there any discussion on this item?
If I may, Councillor Miletto, can I just thank the staff for this report? First of all, there's no 100% definite way you can do some of this research, but I know a lot of councils don't do this. We often have comments made in the media and all over the place about Orange is not doing this, Orange is not doing that, and not doing things according to some sort of plan. This actually shows, this is another report, a way that we try and keep track of how things are moving in the retail sector. And when I say retail, a really broad brush approach. Plus with the other data collect, really can't think of any other data we can collect except if we listen to the lone one or two voices that tell us that everything is doom and gloom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll now put the motion. Those in favour? All against? Against? Declare the motion carried. Your council, that concludes the Economic Development Policy Committee meeting, time being 7:30 p.m. Now call on Councillor Whitten to conduct the Infrastructure Policy Committee meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Miletto. I'll open the Infrastructure and Policy Committee meeting at around... And item 1.1, declarations of pecuniary interest, significant non-pecuniary interest and lessons.
Councillor McRae's on.
Councillor McRae.
Councillor McRae, you do. My apologies. Item 2.1 is the minutes of the City of Orange Committee meeting.
Move, Mr Chair.
Moved by Councillor Romano. Any discussion on this matter?
Chairman, my only concern with this is I just perceive there could... I know that the Traffic Committee are putting in a plan as well as they can as far as... they're putting in a plan as far as they can... No, I'll leave it, Mr. Look, my only concern, I will say it, my only concern is I hope that up around my new DPI building, I hope that the concerns of residents around the area, there will be movement, as is the case with the old and the current building for the DPI, where residents in that area over the years have been severely impacted by what is a majority of moving traffic over there, which is visitors. So a lot of people visit that building on a daily basis. And what happens is that visitors tend to look for a convenient spot that could spread out around residential areas around that DPI building. And I don't think that we should have this, so to speak, plan cast in stone, because I think we are going to encounter problems. We are going to encounter a lot of problems probably from people out of town who don't understand what the particular rules around the precinct are. So I think that the Traffic Committee has done a good job as far as what they're trying to implement at this stage, but I would please again reiterate the fact that I believe we're going to have to make amendments to this plan from time to time to address the concerns of residents.
Can I just comment on that, Mr Chairman?
Councillor Taylor, yes.
Councillor Taylor, Traffic Committee met again this morning, and yes, we share your concerns because we're heading into an unknown at this point. There's a lot more car spaces in the new building than in the old one, but a lot more employees as well. And until the council-owned land to the west of the building, once that's redeveloped, still got the unknown as to what's going to happen in the old nurses' quarters. So, yes, we all agree that there will be a review at the appropriate time.
Good. Mr Chair, can I just ask you a question? Reflecting on places like Toowoomba and Wagga and now parts of, I think it's Hamworth, where they have parking by metre, you don't necessarily have to put money in them, and so forth, you know, for an hour and two, and some places you can park for 2 hours, some places you can only park for an hour. Has there been any consideration, any discussions with traffic about in certain places within the CBD? It's not the whole CBD, I've noticed in those, but it's in certain places where they've had paid parking.
Not at this point, Mr Mayor, no.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
At this point, I think no one's going to bring that up.
I would say, Chair, if you don't mind, the future city work we're doing over the next couple of weeks with you, we'll talk about changes to parking within the CBD. We'll touch on that sort of thing.
And I think for councillors, there's been some concern around the time parking over in the new area. And generally when you put time parking in, it pushes those people who would normally park there to work there out into the residential streets to park and walk to work. So it's good that the Traffic Committee are going to keep an eye on that. Alrighty, I'll put the motion. All those in favour of the Traffic Committee minutes? Against?
Blossom, Mr. Chair.
Okay, it's, the motion is carried. Item 3.1, and Councillor McRae, very much. Item 3.1 is current works.
I'll move it, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved by Councillor Hamling, seconded by Councillor Munro. Is there any discussion on this particular report?
Look, just one if I may on water.
Okay, yep.
In a fairly lengthy discussion this afternoon with the Minister's office and some of her senior people. It is interesting how sometimes a media story can go the wrong way with you. And it's the water cascading over Lake Anobolas doesn't come into our catchment. It doesn't go into our storages. And so I was asked the question, well, how come this is going on there? And I said, why? And they said, we've seen the photos in the media of all the water going over the spillway in your storage dams. And I said, oh, it was only a few days ago. So I had to try and explain to them that it was out at Lake Anobolas and it's a small dam and it's not part of our catchment. So it's interesting. So I'm doing a story with the ABC tomorrow, television, here, explain where our water storages are, and Lake Anobolas is not part of our water storage. Just keeping in mind, you might get some phone calls, people saying, listen, while we've still got restrictions on, I saw this photo with all the water going over the spillway at Lake Anobolas.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I got the same feedback, but I think it came, Mr. Mayor, from the paper where there was a photograph of a couple from Sydney in front of the...
That's the one, yeah.
And it's pretty easy for people to assume that that's our water supply. But through you, Mr. Chairman, it does raise, and people have raised some concerns with me over the fact that I think it's because they've seen media and so forth of Dubbo and Bathurst lifting restrictions and so forth. Really, I mean, have we done a comprehensive look at our catchment recent years? I mean, the proliferation of dams and so forth, that how it has affected our catchment in probably the last 25 years, because really I think looking into the future, a lot of people around this town are saying, our council, do we have a plan for long-term extra storage? And that seems to be the major concern with a lot of citizens that have spoken to me, and I share that concern. But I put a lot of it down to dams that have been put in the catchment, up in the catchment over, like I say, the last 25 years, and it really is a point of concern.
Brenham, do a bit of a summary on that.
Thank you. And through the chair, yes, we do have a plan. It's the Integrated Water Cycle Management Plan. Still valid today as it was when it was written about 10 to 13 years ago. It has a number of, we call short lead options and a number of long lead options for water security for the city. And we've been progressing on a number of those options, and just about every option that's considered when we go into drought in this recent drought period has already been considered in that Integrated Water Cycle Management Plan. It is up for renewal, so it will go out to community consultation again. The first stage is for the state government to release its modelling for stormwater runoff for the area, and when we have that, we will also update what our secure yield is for our current facilities, and as well as model what our future demand will be running through as well, which is part of the Integrated Water Cycle Management Plan, as well as looking at solutions, one of which is more storage.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment before I finish. The fact that the feedback that I get too from the community is that, and as you've indicated, that's the number of housing developments that Orange now sees, and the amount of housing growth in the last 20 years has been phenomenal for the city, and that seems to be a lot of people's concerns too. we've got this growth in number of houses and residences being built, but essentially, I know we've put in the Macquarie pipeline, we've put bores in, we've got stormwater harvesting and everything like that. But I mean, if you look at the amount of housing that we've had in this city over the last 25, 30 years, it's phenomenal. And really, we've still essentially got the same storage facilities in. That causes me.
Mr. Chair, you took the words right out of my mouth just then, because I was going to say
Good song.
Yeah, it would be a good song. I get that asked by lots. You can see the development now going on around when you're driving around, and when the integrated water cycle, whatever plan was written 13 years ago, did it project the housing that we're getting at the moment? Is that?
Yeah, it did. The housing that we're getting at the moment is actually pretty consistent. We've been looking back over past numbers. We generally get around 250 new residential lots a year developed. It's happened before, but the last couple of years has been a little bit slower, and you'll hear some people saying there's not enough land available in the market at the moment, and that's probably reflective of the land that is being released. So the numbers are looking closer to around 200 for the last couple of years. What we've seen in the past when that happens is there's a correction, and you get development at a faster pace for a couple of years to catch up. And so I would predict going forward and looking at the DAs that we have in front of us and the subdivisions that are proposed coming up, that we would be looking to release around 300 lots per year in the next couple of years to catch up with that steady growth.
Yeah, so I concur with Councillor Taylor. I think that concerns me too about where our water is going to be. But as you said, we've had a plan that's up for renewal. So I suppose the residents need to know that we have got that plan and it's coming till its end, and we are in the process of renewing it. And just the steps that it takes to renew that, I think that'd probably be some good reading for the residents.
I can just make a comment,
Sorry,
Mr. Chair. It's
Councillor
interesting. As you know, one of the dams that they're looking at is increasing its capacity. Got the money for it and everything, and all of a sudden being called for a review certain sectors of that dam, and that's Wyangla Dam. And I think the other thing that's quite new from that, Ian, or I don't know if it's in the report, is the movements, in pipelines and that moving water from dams and rivers around an area. Was that part of that report?
No, that's the Integrated Water Cycle Management Plan is specific for the city.
Yeah.
There are other reports that the JO has commissioned, and we've been a part of those, that look at security for water within the region, and that recommends pipelines to move water from one area of the region across to another area of the region. And things like the pipeline through to Molong has been one of those beneficiaries. The pipeline through to Laney and Carcoar is also one of those beneficiaries.
Mr. Chair, Councillor McRae's got a hand up.
Sorry, Councillor McRae, my apologies. I'll have to get somebody to...
That's all right, Mr. Chair. Thank you. We're all testing out this different version of meeting in person and online. My question's in relation to the motion that we approved in February to look at recycled municipal wastewater in terms of supplementing drinking water, or indeed the alternate water supplies. Where's that up to?
Yeah, good question, and that is part of that integrated water cycle management plan, so it'll be one of the solutions. It was one of the solutions considered in the old plan, and obviously as part of that it'll be fleshed out in a lot more detail in the new plan.
And sorry, what's the date for that new plan?
Well, the new plan has a process, and as Councillor Hamling mentioned, it's good to actually inform the community what that process is. Just really broadly, the process needs to look at, before it looks at any solutions, looks at what our security yield is under the current climate conditions of today, with the knowledge that we have at today. And so the state government have been working on that. They haven't yet released it to councils, but once it is, that will inform our secure yield for the city. from its current sources. The second stage of the Integrated Water Cycle Management Plan is to look at what is the growth of the city and what is our projected growth going forward, and what our projected demand will be going forward. And then it looks at balancing that secure yield and that demand and implementing a short listing of projects and a long listing of projects. And obviously, recycled water will be one of those projects that will be considered.
I make a comment, Mr Chair. I have, in discussions with the Minister, Councillor McRae, I've put our hand forward to say that we would love to pilot here in Orange a micro desalination plant, one thing that's been used in some areas now. And secondly, we'd only be too happy to do a pilot here for effluent reuse, sorry, yeah.
For residences on Escort Way, is that right? That's where the mayor lives. I might just make a comment myself. I think why the stormwater harvesting, this is where the stormwater harvesting is really important, because as a couple of councillors has mentioned, is that we're urbanising our catchment, traditional catchment area, and it's now gone from running off into our storage to now running out as stormwater. So we're sort of giving up water to stormwater rather than consuming it into our catchment storage. So we need to catch more stormwater or increase our stormwater harvesting. Sorry, Councillor Turner.
Thanks, Mr Chairman. Following up on the stormwater harvesting, wondering where the Blackman Swamp stormwater harvesting scheme is up to, and regarding new housing and new development, etc., I've always had the understanding that when our stormwater harvesting scheme is fully operational, has been developed, that a new subdivision road and the house will contribute something like 25 or 30% of that house's water consumption. Is that correct? It
certainly has the potential to contribute. I can't say exactly what the numbers are for each individual house lot or that section of road, but I can give you an update on the Blackman Stage 2 proposal, and it's currently in development. We've got two parallel trains of action going forward. One's the compulsory land acquisition, which we have approval through the Minister to go forward with, and that's in process and running parallel to the detailed design, the community consultation, and the review of environmental factors associated with that.
Any idea when that might be finalised?
We're anticipating that both lots will be finalised by the end of the calendar year, so that with approvals as well, and we need to allow a 2 to 3 month period for approvals at the end of the REF process, and so works would potentially, provided that those approvals come through, works would start in the new calendar year, so around February. It's the anticipation.
Could I have a report somewhere down the track regarding the stormwater harvesting and new subdivisions, either confirming or opposite of denying those figures of 25-30%? Because if we can capture 25-30% of the water coming off those new subdivisions, I think it would ease some of the angst of any new subdivision that's coming on. That in effect 30% of water captured off that subdivision is going to be reused within that subdivision, so they're not totally taking 100% of the water out of Zuma Park, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And it will. Happy to provide some detail on that. It'll vary depending on the size of the lots that are developed, and then also the intensity within those lots. So
just a general within a few percentage points here.
Because the mechanisms of catchment are changing. Yeah, basically you're going from.
Mr. Chair, don't forget, not all that long back we approved a development in here. Is actually looking at stormwater harvesting and capturing the water, and that direction, which is virtually makes it neutral.
Okay, is there any more questions?
Yes, Mr.
Councillor
Chair.
Nugent.
Sorry, it's not about water, it's about footpaths. I had one of our residents raise an issue with me about the possibility of footpaths at Dudley Hospital, near Dudley Hospital. He raised it because he was there the other day. There was an elderly woman who couldn't park in the car park because the car park was full. She had to park sort of downhill from the hospital. And she had a walker, and she couldn't walk on the footpath because it's grass and fairly rough. So she was sort of walking up a hill on the road with this gentleman that was assisting her with traffic sort of coming up the hill behind her. So I have checked, and I understand that there's no plans for building footpaths in that area in the near future. But we did increase the budget for footpaths quite considerably in the budget, and I just wonder whether we can give some consideration as to whether that's possible to include in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Certainly can give it consideration. We can also consider if Dudley Hospital has plans for expansion to condition them to actually put a footpath on their frontage. But yeah, we can look at both options.
And do you need a motion that way? I think we should, because it is expanding.
Definitely out the back it is.
May I interrupt, Chair?
Yeah.
On the 18th, we're bringing you a full project list of every project we're working on, which is something you've requested, including footpaths and roads. Could we park it for that?
Sure, that's fine.
Thanks. Okay. Just going to be easier.
Councillor Duffy was first.
Councillor Duffy.
You'll start whinging.
Go for it, mate.
Don't have to
Mr.
stand
Chairman. My question, my comment is about the other day I took a drive with the director around some of our rural roads, and one of the things that was conveyed to me was from the residents live along Ophir Road. They were really pleased that probably within the next day or so all the potholes were filled up and they can drive safely into town. They wanted to say thank you. So I must be running a temperature to sort of praise you a little bit there. But I was pleased to hear the General Manager say a minute ago that the CEO having a report coming back, because we can look at some of those rural roads that we're talking about having it fixed in our asset renewal program.
We'll have to send you to Queensland more often, Councillor Duffy. Hey, Councillor Hamley.
No, the Queensland would agree with that.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question to the Director? At the last council meeting, or might have been the one before, about Ploughman's Lane, you said we didn't have the money. My understanding was we did have the money. So do we have the money?
We have the money now.
Fantastic.
We do not have, and we didn't have, and we still do not have, a funding deed for the money.
Okay.
So what we have is a minister's announcement.
Yeah. And the Director would like to answer Councillor Duffy's question.
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
Oh, it's another matter, is it?
Another matter. Back to Councillor Nugent's question on Dudley Hospital. I just had it confirmed also that part of the existing expansion that's happening at Dudley Hospital, there is additional parking being provided as well. So that's still underway.
So that additional parking hasn't yet occurred, because we did pass a DA for an expansion of that.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that's still to come. Okay.
That's still to come.
No further questions? Okay, I'd just like to congratulate Mr. Greenham and the CEO and the staff for the amount of work that's been started and completed over the last period during our COVID or during the COVID pandemic. It's been great stuff. If you look around town, I've noticed the amount of new footpaths that are being done. It's just fantastic. So congratulations to the council staff and councillors for continuing to keep the city viable and growing and getting projects completed, a new one started. With all of that, all those in favour of this particular report? Against? The motion is carried.
Chair, could I just have a couple of matters arising, if that's all right?
Councillor Hamley.
The mountain bike track at Mount Canobolas, I saw some things, some comment on the from the state members' Facebook page saying that the mountain bike track is it's in council's hands at the moment. Could I just want to know where we're up to with it.
Greenham, is that your baby? Is that Mr. Sorry,
Mr. Waddell.
I've got that one.
Oh, you've
Chair.
got that,
I've
Mr.
this one, Chair.
CEO.
Yeah. Well, he's right. We have to get the track approved. We are within a week or two of putting out a brief to a consultant to spend the $500,000 that council voted into the budget, and it will be game on at that point. First step is to get that approval.
Thank you.
When did David Boyle may?
Councillor Wynne.
I've got a
You're right,
question.
Councillor Romano, my apologies.
On that with the EIS done in conjunction.
Oh, it's rather complex through you, Mr. Chair. The landowner's national parks. The landowner is also Cabon. We're the applicant, and as a result, I've asked the minister if he'd consider it being a state significant development, take away the sort of local politics.
It's good
project, like the Macquarie Pipeline was.
Councillor Romano?
Rail. Council remember. I put a motion up regarding the chairlift. Has that been brought up again with any ministers? Is there a requirement that? And how's the mountain bike trail going to work without having the ability to get back up? Ride down. How are you going to get back up?
I'll answer that. The first thing is getting an EIS that you can actually do it. You don't get an EIS that says you can do it. Well, that
can't do anything.
And
Okay.
then if you get the EIS up, it's the operational side on how it works. Yeah.
Then so once we get the EIS, we can open that up again. Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you, Councillor Romano.
Yep.
Councillor Hammond, you got some more?
Yep. Just a couple of things. I just want to know how the cricket centre's going, whether we're on time for the opening, and the sports precinct after the turning of the sod. Is there any movement on that at all?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Certainly, Mr. Munda.
The cricket centre's in front of schedule, so we are expecting that to be finished towards the end of September. So I'll shortly arrange with councillors an opportunity to tour that. They're just finishing the curtilage around the building now, and then we can organise a tour through the centre. So that will be operational end of October at this point. So it's been a good project, and Hines Constructions have done a really good job with that. On the sports precinct, so I intend to bring a report back to council, but I'll just give you a quick overview. So there's 4 real components at the moment that we're working on. So the first one is the funding deed. So we, as you know, we were advised we had received 25 from the state. We're finalising that agreement with the state now. That funding will come to council. There is a desire from the state, because it's stimulus money, to have it expended by June 2022. That's a fairly optimistic program timeline, so that's less than 2 years from today. So we will do our very best to get close to that and build into that agreement a couple of arrangements if we can't deliver it in that time. We, as you know, don't have anything before council or any approvals at this point, so there's a bit of work to do before in the next 2 years.
Is that completed by completed by 2022 or?
Correct. The project plan.
880.
Project plan.
Ready for South Sydney Canterbury game, mate. Sorry, Mr. Munda.
All right. The project plan that we had developed had us looking at completion at the end of 2022. And part of that was around being in a position with the World Cup for the women's soccer for 2023 and having some serious discussions around hosting a host nation in Orange. So that's part of our plan. I realistically think it'll fall somewhere between those 2 dates, June and December. A couple of things we need to do it, obviously, at the front end. So the land, as you know, is Crown land. Council's the Crown land manager. Ex-Service Club had the lease over it for a golf course. So we're finalising that arrangement for the termination with them and relieving them of their maintenance agreements responsibilities. So it's just a bit of negotiation there to work through. DAs, so they'll all come to council for consideration. We'll do it under a master plan approach. So we will provide an overarching outline of the project, and that will be for separate DAs that will come to council. One will be for the clearing of the site, then it'll be the civil works, then it'll be athletics, then it will be the main sporting precinct. I anticipate that the construction of the athletics precinct and the main sporting precinct, when I say that, main sporting precinct, that's the rectangular field with the grandstand. Those two projects will overlap. We've entered into an arrangement with Public Works Advisory, New South Wales Government, to provide project management. So Gavin Priestley heads that up. A number of you will be familiar with Gavin. And the project manager is located in Dubbo. Been working on the Dubbo Sports Precinct, so brings some experience. That we will augment that with local project management staff. At the moment, we're in the process of pulling together all the supporting documents for the DAs. So geotech, contamination and survey have all been awarded and underway. Geotech and contamination have both been completed. We're just waiting on the results. Surveys being conducted. And we've got another a range of other specialist reports: noise, traffic, environmental, heritage, and the environmental will lead that. They will then conduct those other couple of the noise and traffic assessments as well. So that'll be awarded early next week. And then landowners' consent. Once we have some detail, we'll go through the Crown. So they're kind of the things we're just working on at the minute with the sports precinct. So first DA to council in the next couple of months.
Fantastic. Thank you. I understand when the Mayor and I were out there the other day, I understand that the Premier and the Deputy Premier both signed off on it. So, and they want to fast track it. So, yeah, great news for Orange, I think.
Yeah, and that's what the stimulus money. That's what the stimulus money was about, to get that money into the community. Yep. And so, two things: have the project delivered as quickly as we can. It's for its benefit, quite apart from the stimulus in the current environment.
I make a comment too. I think Councillor Miletto's done pretty well out of this. Bradman Park is just now going to have an athletics field and grandstands and footy fields and all sorts of bits and pieces added to it.
My time we had to play in the freeze and wind. Munro, you got a matter arising? I see your hand up.
Just a question. I wonder if in the next little while, maybe before Christmas sometime, councillors might be able to have a little bit of a look around there on the proposed site of exactly where it's going to go and how maybe I've had quite a few residents email me and ring me about some of the bushland out there that could be saved or whatever, or how we're going to minimise that because it is a beautiful area to walk in and the rest of it.
Walk in it.
And I really don't have fences, so I'd love to be able to one stage or another go out with somebody and have a little look on where and what's going to be retained and what's not. Go forward.
More than happy, Councillor, any time to do that with yourself and anyone else that's interested. Or I can do multiple trips, but
that'd be for you, Mr. Chair. Wouldn't that be included in the master plan, which is already on display for? Yeah,
it will.
I know, but
it will, and it'll be included in the environmental assessment.
It'd be good to walk the site.
It is worth walking across. It is 9 holes of golf course now.
Take your golf clubs, have a whack.
It's worth walking over. So I certainly can do that.
Mr. Chair, if I can, I don't know. Same thing. I don't know how many emails I've responded to, and I've responded in the press and so forth. And we just point out that the sports precinct is on 9 holes of the golf course, and the pine trees that were planted on the pine course were planted in a paddock. It was a denuded paddock, and it was the overflow that used to be Orange Aerodrome, Bradman Park now. Paddock had nothing in it. When the Exercise Club got it as around land to put a golf course on it, they planted those pine trees themselves to define the fairways. The majority, not all, but by far the majority of the trees, what the sports precinct will go on are radiata pine. This is not on, I think it's very, very important to note that this is not on the Bloomfield grounds, which do have those magnificent gardens and a whole range of both exotic trees and native trees, shrubs and bushes. In fact, if you want to have a look at it, the best way to describe it without even going out there, if you drive out, find where the sheds are, the Greenkeeper sheds on Brabham Park, and up to the road. That first entrance into the hospital, back this way. It's not in the hospital.
Alrighty. No further speakers. I'll close the infrastructure meeting at 8:05, and I'll open the Finance Policy Committee at 8:05. There's no declaration or pecuniary interests in this particular report. There's none. Pardon me. Item 2.1, request for financial assistance, post-exhibition Duntry League Golf Club.
Recommendation.
Been moved by Councillor Romano, seconded by Councillor Munro. Any discussion on this matter?
Yes, I've got a question.
Oh, sorry, Councillor. Yes. Councillor McCracken.
I appreciate the detail in the report, but one of the concerns that has come to me is regarding any indemnity or insurance over the works. So I know that, there were concerns about the Hawke's Dam possibly needing, risk management for in case it failed. So I guess my questions are relating to this particular project: warranty in case of possible failure or repairs that might be needed. Hate to see, something collapse, take out the highway, the traffic lights and the Greengate shops. But also I think, importantly for this work being done and staff providing the services, what's the liability for council or council staff who are involved in the project?
I'll get Mr. Redmond to answer that question, Councillor McCracken.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. We're not actually undertaking the work in this particular project aside from survey work, so we won't have any warranty over the works as such. What we're planning to do, if council resolves to proceed, we'll create a deed of agreement as well that will require the club to do some works such as DAs and a few other things that they'll need to do, and we still are covered by our public liability and indemnity insurance, so no issues to that effect.
So the deed of agreement basically means council's not going to be liable if something goes wrong in the future.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, I had a question as well, and I think it's probably for Mr. Greenham through you, Mr. Chair, but it relates to the stormwater harvesting aspects of the project. I have had some additional information provided from the staff, and I appreciate what's been provided. I did speak against this previously because of my concerns about diverting any water from the stormwater harvesting scheme. But I understand that this project, while it's diverting some water into that dam from the stormwater harvesting scheme, there may also be some benefits in terms of our water infrastructure for the city. And I was just interested to get Mr. Greenham if he could just expand on that question.
Certainly. Mr. Greenham.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Nugent. The impervious catchment area that will be detoured into Duntry Leagues Dam from this proposal is in the order of only 4 hectares. Our total citywide impervious catchment area is nearly 3,000 hectares, so it's 29 square kilometres, or 2,953 hectares. So the area that we're harvesting from is really just 0.1%, or fairly close to 0.1% of the total impervious area that's proposed to be detoured. So, and this water while it will go off and into the dam, any additional water still returns back to our stormwater system by an overflow within
overflow from the dam.
From the dam, yeah.
Right.
So in fact, it actually follows the principles of water-sensitive urban design, in that when you do get a storm, you deflect as much as that stormwater, that initial stormwater, off into the adjacent green space as the rain garden in effect. And in this case, that's what they intend to do, is to actually use this and then pump water back up for future irrigation around the golf course. And it follows those principles. In doing that, it also takes off some of the pressure within our own older, because this section is in an older section of town. It takes off some of the pressure of the existing system, even though development has grown around it. So there's more stormwater being generated. And it allows our existing pipes to hold a little bit more capacity, because some of that water is being diverted into Dountree League as such. So there's currently in the 1 in 100 year flows, there is minor flooding at that Escort Way, the Forbes Road, Malong Road intersection. This will actually help to mitigate that. Okay. So, there's a number of factors that make it a proposal that should be supported by council.
Thank you, Mr. Greenham. Councillor Maletta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only concern regards the recommendation is around point 2, and I'm just wondering whether the mover.
Me.
Thank you, Councillor Romano. My concern is around the wording of wages. What I'm concerned about, I have no other issues with the recommendation at all, but around the word wages, the $3,500, I am concerned about is that by giving the golf club the $3,500 for wages, what type of message does this send to the community, and will it create a precedent for other sporting clubs or other organisations or businesses, Dountree League being a business? It would obviously be entitled to JobKeeper anyway. Is it in the best interest of the Orange ratepayers to be subsidising a golf club to the value of $3,500 for wages?
Well, I'm glad, if I may, I'm glad you asked who the mover was, because without a mover and a secondary, you wouldn't even be talking about it. So because I moved, it doesn't necessarily mean that I am supporting every item here, right? Because you referred to me as the mover, didn't you? What reason? You said who
I was
moved?
going to make a change, Mr.
I want to make a change.
Mr. Councillor Romano.
Okay, so you want to make an amendment.
So I think what I'll do is I'll let the director answer the question, but my understanding is that we're not actually paying their wages. We're probably just saying that part of the cost is our wages of staff being involved, but I'll let the director.
Mr. Chair, can I just make a comment first?
Really?
No, it's not setting a precedent. I'd like to point out that we built a toilet block on Wentworth Golf Course. That was because a lot of work was being done up behind Wentworth Golf Course by a land care group. We've also put substantial funds from this council into Waratah Sports Club in a number of ways, with roads and a whole host of different things. We put substantial funds into Kinross Wallaroy School. That's just a few, and I could go on with the list. I would say you could say all of those are private businesses, but in reality, they are very important parts of our community.
Mr. Greenham.
Yeah, just a really minor detail, but something of significance is there's infrastructure and wages. So that's the total cost that's anticipated for the value of the stormwater pipes and the installation costs of those stormwater pipes. No one's going to not get paid as such out of this process. It's simply
in kind.
There's some in-kind work that some of the guys have done in their own time as far as the survey work goes for this. So it's that those staff have actually donated themselves with their own free will. So it's wrapping up the value of all of that.
Thank you for the clarification. It just wasn't clear.
Thank you.
Sorry, that conflicts.
Councillor
Sorry,
McRae.
that seems to conflict with the earlier answer from acting director regarding that the works that weren't actually being done by council, therefore there was no need for the warranty. But you're saying that council is doing the installation of the infrastructure.
We will, just for clarification, we will install the pipes. So the pipes that go across our footpath, we will install. We are not being involved in the construction of the dam itself. And the dam wall, I don't believe, is proposed to be raised or anything. It's just that the ground behind it will be dug out to further expand the dam's capacity.
Thank you.
Move the motion be put, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. But look, I concur with the Mayor. Over my time, 17 years, this council has been involved in many community projects hand in hand to ensure that certain things are done for those great community assets. So in saying that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour of item 2.1, raise your hands. Against? We have one against, and that's Councillor McRae. Thank you, Councillor McRae. Thank you, councillors. Item 2, 3, I'll go back to my minutes. 2.2, request for financial assistance, Banjo Patterson Festival National Poetry Championships.
Move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
By Councillor Nugent, seconded by Councillor Turner. Any discussion on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've got a discussion on this item. This is one of my favourite poets, as you know. My question is, if the event goes ahead, concerned about the event going ahead, if people are going to come from away and from hotspots of Sydney and those type of things there.
Well, President Putin's just announced to the world he has a vaccine.
Is the money required?
Just announced it.
Is the money, if the money's not required and they don't get the event,
yep,
is it coming back so we don't worry about it, or?
I'll go to the CEO.
I was thinking about Mr. Putin. Can you repeat the question, please, Councillor?
The question was if we
we
donate the money, or if we agree to the.
I just want to get my message.
If we agree to the motion, Mr. CEO, councillors, and the event doesn't go ahead, do they still keep the money?
No.
No.
Back.
We're back.
They've spent it.
Any further questions? No further questions. I put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Motion is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. I'll close the financial committee meeting at 8:17, and I will ask for Councillor Munro to chair the Services Committee.
I'd like to open the Service Policy Committee meeting, 7th of August 2020, time being 18 minutes past 8. Does any councillor have any pecuniary interests, significant non-pecuniary interests, or less than significant non-pecuniary interests in any matter listed for consideration this evening?
Nope.
Item 2.1, minutes of the NAIDOC committee.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Can I just note that I went to the NAIDOC Week committee meeting, I think it was last week. So the dates of the Orange NAIDOC Week are now being moved back to coincide with the new dates for the National NAIDOC Week, which is the 8th to the 15th of November. So I think that'll be the first time that the two things have happened together, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor, in a number of years. So I think that'll be a very good thing. What is going to be a challenge is what events will be able to be held, some of the big events like the Street March and the awards night, whether they will be able to be held in November, and if so, in what form they'll be able to be held. So there's 3 events in particular, those 2 that I mentioned, plus the Family Fun Day. And I suppose I just ask if, given those difficulties and uncertainties, if council's event management staff team might be able to provide some support or advice to the NAIDOC Week committee members about how to do that, because they're talking about awards nights that are held sort of virtually with presentations. So I think it's going to be quite a challenge for the NAIDOC Week committee, and I think any support we can provide them would be very good.
CEO's indicated that will be made
Thank
available.
you for bringing that up, Councillor Nugent. Thank you. I'll put the motion. Sorry. I'll put the motion.
Was the amendment?
That's okay. You voted on that.
We're right now. Done. Thank you. Everyone voted that way. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the Services Policy Committee meeting. Time being 22 minutes past 8. I'd like to hand it back to Councillor Kidd.
Thank you very much, Lee.
Councillors, I just need to apologise. I need to leave the meeting early for something that's happening tomorrow.
Fine.
8:21.
Item number 4, notice of motions, and that's 4.1. That's been withdrawn. So we move down to general reports. First of all, under 5, we have 5.1. It's the Health and Innovation Precinct Master
Second
Plan.
that.
Moved by Councillor Hamling, second by Councillor Whitten.
Can I move an amendment, Mr. Mayor?
Of course you can.
Just an amendment to the first point, that the master plan be adopted with the addition of a 7th master planning principle on green space and passive recreation. So that's the amendment.
I'm happy to move second that just for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Who got the wording for that?
So the wording is to be adopted with the addition of a 7th master planning principle, green space and passive recreation.
I think I could have.
Is that a real principle?
Did you get that? Yeah.
Oh, well, it's as real as
silly.
all the other principles, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, if I can speak to that, I'll just say I'll go along with it, because I know that will fulfil that one very, very easily, because the grounds that we're talking about probably got the most park-like setting of anywhere I know in any hospital area of the world. Across the road we have New South Wales TAFE, the old dump site and the night soil paddock, which has all been planted out with natives. At the back of the hospital, council over the last 5 or 6 years, I don't know how spent so much money getting rid of all the briars and so forth out the back in conjunction with the Landcare Group. That's all been planted out. And the other work that's been done on Gosling Creek, Bloomfield Park, I think that'll be the first thing that'll get ticked, so I'll support that.
Councillors, Mr Chair, if I may, point councillors to page 145, and you can walk yourself through the 6 principles that precede the 7th that is proposed.
Well done.
Next reason.
Is adding another principle to a document that's been on 28 days.
Yeah, go again. That's all we've got in front of us, Mr. Mayor, at the moment.
Yep.
That's all we've got. I'll move the amendment, which is a recommendation.
No, we had.
No,
I
that's
moved
a
the
motion.
Yeah.
That's okay.
My concern is that will this cause any adding another principle to a document that's already been.
Mr. Chair, I don't think
Can I
so,
speak
Mr. Chair, no.
speak to the amendment, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Look, the reason I raise it is that in the other 6 master planning principles, there's very little mention of environment. As you've rightly pointed out, Mr. Mayor, that's a really key environmental area out there with some beautiful green space. As Councillor Munro indicated earlier, it's a space where it's really. I did have the opportunity to go and walk the southern parts, south of the sporting precinct, amongst the trees there on the golf course, and I've also had representation from a number of people saying concerned about the 430 odd trees that will go from in building the sporting precinct, and asking if that sort of passive recreation, that green space where people can wander through that area, which is now sort of in the master plan talks about health, innovation and research, if that space can be maintained as much as possible. There's also those key areas of Bloomfield bushland which are really important. And in terms of a health and innovation precinct, in terms of health, green space and passive recreation are really key parts, in my view, about environmental health and the good health of the community and people in general. So I just think it promotes that aspect of the area, which is already there. I acknowledge is already there, but I think it's important to reinforce that with that addition.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor.
I'll speak for the motion. Mayor, putting such a clause on the end of this at this time, I don't think that we've got any information in front of us what it entails, what the ramifications of it are, how it affects the overall plan for the future. Having it thrown straight at us here tonight, I mean, I can't support it if I don't know what the detail of it is. I'm not suggesting that there is any alternative motive here, but I mean, putting something like that straight in front of us with such a significant document, then saying, oh, by the way, we better add this to it at the end of it. I don't believe we with due diligence or governance that we would be able to do that. I just would question what we would do with it. Where's the detail?
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Look, if I can speak, I'll speak for the motion. I feel very, very confident that in this work that will be done. It's already been done by our staff in the concept plans. It was already done with the building of the actual hospital out there. I know that it was most definitely done with the development and Scare West Lodge, and I'm sure that will continue right through. I think sometimes by adding something on, knowing that we're going to do it, half can indicate that we're not doing it. In this case, I think by adding that on, here is sort of indicating that we don't do that. Well, we do. I'm very, very proud to say this council does do that. Is very, very important to them, and I don't want to have something on there that looks like that we don't take that into consideration. We do. If you have a read through there, we most definitely do. Councillor Miller, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I support the motion, and the reason I do that because with the amendment, one thing which Councillor Nugent indicated was the words "where possible." I think that the motion covers that anyway, as you've already clearly indicated. So regardless of the amendment, which is where possible, that is already incorporated in the motion. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Oh, look, I'll put the amendment first.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I?
Yes, sure.
Just write a reply?
You can.
No, you don't have a right. It's an amendment.
Amendment.
You don't
have a right to reply on an amendment?
The amendment. All in favour of the amendment, show your hands. Against? The amendment's lost. Move the motion. All in favour? Against? Thank you.
Great master plan.
Obviously, our next step, and I want you all lobbying as hard as you possibly can. We want this as a local activation precinct. That's what we want now.
Mr. Mayor, just as a matter arising out of that, I think you hit on a very important point as far as sporting precinct is concerned earlier, and your explanation as far as the trees are concerned. And I wonder if we could, if you could, do your best and with council clarify that point very clearly to people, because we are all getting, I'm sure, correspondence and people talking to us about it and concerns about the damage to the environment and trees and so forth. So I think, Mr. Mayor, that message it's very important that we get that message out that the precinct is going in place and we are very, very aware of the nature out there in the environment. Yeah.
Just a matter arising, Mr. Mayor, with regards to these radiata pine, I think you said they were.
Yep.
Is there any opportunity to have those pine harvested?
Oh, look, I'm quite sure they'll be looking at that because there is a possibility it could pay its way by...
Be a good opportunity to use some of that pine to for some construction of something around Orange as a matter of history.
Yeah, for sure.
Or the wood bank.
Can't burn
You can't burn it, mate.
Yeah,
yeah look, I'm quite sure they'll be looking at it because, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, just as a matter arising, if I may, a number of the submissions talk about environmental issues, and the response or the staff comment is, in all cases, that consideration of open space will be a significant issue in future stages. And then I go to the next steps, and to me it doesn't clearly say what the next stages are. And where there'll be that opportunity to consider open space and environment. Can I ask a question as to what those next stages are?
In this case, I'll let you, but we've already voted on it.
Well, can I, as a matter arising, can I ask for further clarification
I am going
separately?
to allow you on this occasion, Councillor Redden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next stage referred to was local activation precincts, possible LEP amendments, and eventually development application.
So there'll be opportunities in each of those stages to...
Definitely. Okay. All right, thank you. We move on to 5.2, which is the demolition of Perioval Amenities Building.
Recommendation.
Mover in Councillor Turner, seconder was Councillor Munro.
Mayor, I'll speak. I was quite gobsmacked when I read this report, and I was quite amazed at some of the comments as far as the intentions about just restoring Perioval to some of its significance that it had years ago. Perioval is an asset for this city. We've got an area there, an open space. We're talking about recreational areas and open space and so forth here tonight. And it's a very important area, particularly now with the growth, the amount of growth that's up there and housing that's up there. There's not a lot of recreational areas. I'm quite surprised. I mean, I don't know what some people want. Do they want us to subdivide it for housing? Because I'd certainly fight that to the death. I mean, the fact of the matter is the amenities block there, I was amazed when I read the report on it that it was going to cost $122,000. I've been up there, went up there again this afternoon to have a look, and really, I mean, you simplify it, it's no larger really than a normal double garage on a home. It's a double brick concrete oblong shaped building with very little in it apart from concrete. Which the intention was it was never going to, or did I intend to ask that it be in competition with our new sporting precinct. I mean, it was meant as the amenities block would remain there if the community or sporting clubs or so forth wanted to hold a barbecue or they wanted to just change rooms that they could use. So, I mean, I was absolutely gobsmacked when I seen that it was touted to be demolished. Mr. Mayor, I've got some questions, and the first question I want on the record here tonight is that how much did the report cost for the assessment, the Cook Row report? Because I read closely the report, and it's clearly indicated that, and so they've made an assessment of it, and they've said that the building effectively is going to be too costly to do anything with, and it wouldn't be economically viable. But Mr. Mayor, when I read it and I went through, and then I was absolutely amazed when I seen that there was a report commissioned in April 2013. And the bottom line of that report was that they recommended that the facility be locked up until it is council determined to demolish it. Now, my question is this: why would we commission another report on a building 7 years later when we've had that building locked up with absolutely no maintenance at all? In fact, it's probably been vandalised more since that 2013 report. Have we any idea, Mr Mayor, firstly, how much that Cook Row report cost?
Mr Waddell. Mr Maunder.
Through the chair, I'd expect it to be in the order of $1,500 to $2,000 for that type of report.
Why did we get a report 7 years later on a building that was determined in the previous report that it needed to be demolished? Would we get a second report? The building wouldn't repair itself.
Simply because of the cost of demolition and replacement was significant. And spending a couple of $1,000s to verify the content of the original report, it was regarded as being valuable for money, to see if there was another way with which the building could be retained. So that was the intent. When you compare the two reports, you'll see they're very different. The Cook Row report is structured towards retaining the building and what we could do possibly, and the works required to do that.
$122,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the assessment by Cook Row. So that was the intent of getting that second one done. That was around retaining the building, what would be required. Whereas the first one was simply a straight assessment. So that's why we did it, see if there was a way to keep the building.
Mr Mayor, thank you, Mr Director. Mr Mayor, I'm amazed at this. I mean, my intention was always that to restore Perry Oval to some sort of community use. Now, whether it be sporting clubs or whether it just be the community, where the community could go and kick a ball. Council over the years have put significant infrastructure in there. I would hate to cost and replace the lights that are up there, training lights. So it's a field that's available for sporting clubs if they so wish to use it for training. It has, and I believe, and I used to live near that facility, and I know that it had a cricket pitch in the middle of it many years ago. It was topped probably 20, 25 years ago. I can't see where we would have actually gone and excavated the cricket pitch. I'd imagine it might still be there, as would be the irrigation, I would imagine. Now, that was the intent, to provide a recreational facility that already exists. There was no malice, there was no wastage or intent of wasting public money on this. I asked in a briefing session if we could have a look and get a costing or get some sort of idea what we could allocate to Perry Oval, which I'm entitled to do, and I did that. I suffered criticism for doing that and the process I followed. The reason I did that, there was no backup correspondence and so forth. I didn't know there was a report that was done in 2013 that recommended that the facility be demolished. But, Mr Mayor, what it brings me to is we commission a report in 2013 that says the facility up there should be demolished. We then lock the place up and we don't even do any maintenance on it for 7 years. I mean, it just defies logic why we do this. Now we get a report that says going to be $122,000. I would like to see a few young tradies in Orange go up and give us a quote on replacing the roof and replacing the... I understand there's asbestos and fibro in parts of the roof and some panels would need to be replaced, but there's asbestos in the majority of homes that are around that area, including the one I grew up in, as far as fibro is concerned. I just can't see where $122,000 comes out. And now I reiterate, Mr Mayor, I never intended that amenities block to be used as a training facility or a change room for a first grade site. It was only meant as a facility maybe for the community or a team to use as a dressing room. So really, I find this whole thing is just amazing. In 25 years I've been in this council, I've never seen where we have an asset that we've let run down We've let it deteriorate. It's sat there now, and I want to make a point too for all the critics who are against trying to do something here too. The report on that amenities block was commissioned and put in place before I asked any questions or moved anywhere about doing something about that facility and that oval. All I'm doing is trying to provide a facility for the community to use that is not being used at the moment. And then we come back with 122,000. How about we get some independent quotes on this?
I'd like to move an amendment to the recommendation that this item be deferred. We have a briefing session on this and then an inspection of any councillors who would like to go to the site.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Second that?
I will second that.
Now, if I may speak to it, I agree with some of the points that you've brought up there. So I've copped a fair bit of flack about it too, and I think it's just extraordinary sometimes where we can talk about we want green space and then forget about this space. This space is in an area where there are lots of families, there are lots of children, and it's a fair way to any other sort of areas. It's already, structurally it's flat, drained, it's got lights on it, and it used to be one of the main grounds in Orange, and that's fantastic, we can move away. But if you look at the possible uses, a dog lease-free area, kids throwing frisbees, just kicking around. But the surface has just had no maintenance on it, and it's got weeds, and the weeds are that thick you couldn't kick a ball around, it won't. But over in one corner, $30,000 or $50,000 worth of cricket nets.
Cricket nets. Yep.
The only problem is if the ball comes outside the cricket nets this way, you wouldn't chase it because you get conked on the head by it. Now, it is a big space. It is in an area where I think they need somewhere to walk, run, whatever it may be. Down the future, there may be. And I made this point just recently. I'll bet you if we put out expressions of interest for a community group or a sporting club that want to use that as their training or whatever, I'll bet you we'd have a lot of people come forward because some of them now juggle between who's on between 4 and 6 and who's on between 6 and 8, so forth, and we need to have a proper look at it. The other one that is important to me, it's a little bit of history, is that oval was named after Dan Perry, who is Orange's longest serving councillor. He was also a deputy mayor who lived in that area, and he still got family that lives in Orange, and it was those family members that approached me and a number of other people from up in that area. Now, I've heard quite often in this chamber, someone's approached me about this and that. There was a number of people, including the Perry family, that were quite upset by the fact that the state was getting, and they had been told that it was disappearing, going off the map. So I think I would like to see us have a bit more time, take a deep breath and actually have a look up there and what we're actually talking about. Even for this year maybe spraying the weeds out and preparing the ground so it's not a bad surface. I'm not talking about the Sydney Cricket Ground or anything, but a place where kids could actually play or whatever they could get around. Absolutely. In the place there. With the amenities building itself, I have to look at that report there, but I lived in a fibro home and my old area is fibro home, so most of them, and Council Amberley would be in the same boat. There's some cases where, you can do repairs, and the one that got me the most out of this report, when I had a look up there and went there, the roof's not leaking. So why in the hell?
Dry as a bone. I was up there this over. Dry as a bone.
The roof's not leaking, and it's a corrugated iron roof, which are all over the place in Orange. Perhaps a coat of paint on it for sure and for certain and make it look nice and dark green again. But heaven forbid, even if the walls and everything actually had to come out, I don't know. Look, as I said, that's what I want to actually have a look. We could go.
Can I reiterate? We don't want it up to the standard where it's going to be a flash sporting facility. We just want the repairs done so that the facility would be available for the community if they so wish to use it. Maybe they want to have a fundraising day there for families or something where they can kick a ball around or whatever they want to have. But they could use those facilities because they'd be able to have barbecues there or whatever. That's the intent. We don't want it perfect. There's reports here saying that the slab has to be completely dug up, and that misses the entire point. I can't see why we have to demolish it when it can be reused by the community. And I certainly do not agree with $122,000 use of ratepayers' funds to bring it up to scratch when we don't know how many people will use it. But at least if we put it into a condition where it is reasonable and people can use it, and hasn't got smashed windows, and it hasn't got panels out of the roof and so forth, at least then it's there for the community if they do wish to use it, because it is there. And we don't have to spend $20,000 to demolish it.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Duffy had his hand
Yeah,
up.
thanks, Mr. Mayor. A number of points that I want to raise, and I'm not going to support I'm going to support the amendment, not the motion. I'd like to see what Councillor Taylor's talking about as regards to tradies, what they could do to fix it. I'm also concerned about the amount of money that we've actually spent on 2 reports. I don't know what they add up to, because I'm pretty sure they would nearly be the cost of what we want to try and repair. But I read the report and I see cracks in the wall and all these type of things. Go across the road over here to the CWA Hall. They're twice as big. That means that we go around every building across Orange with cracks in them. Look at everything else we own. I think we've just been a little bit harsh what's going on here. And I want to go back to what the situation is. A couple of things I want to raise. Number one, you go out to Manildra and you see a $465,000 grandstand built by the community themselves, headed up by a guy called Graham Gibson. He's got kids and friends that are plumbers and all these types of things. They stepped up to the mark and did it. We're going to hit the ratepayers with something like this, and we're going to tell them $122,000. I'm with you. I don't even think anywhere near that amount of money. I think there's just, I just question the whole process that we're going through here, and I just lots of words. And Perry Oval, it's not 40 years old. It's not 50. It's more than that, because I remember playing rugby league there in 1965. You can add that on there. So it's been there for a hell of a long time. And that family that would have put it in there, and Dan Perry, would have rallied the people around, and they would have backed the process of what was actually going on.
It was replaced in the late 60s.
So I think I'll put the amendment for deferral. Councillor, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clear in my mind. I certainly support the fact that we're going to go and have another look at it. But I think with regards, obviously I wasn't around in 2013, and some of the councillors here were part of that original decision making to close.
It never came to us, Councillor.
Came to council.
Came to the council.
Sorry,
never
my
came to
apologies.
council.
I wasn't around
At that point, never came to council.
Never came to council. We didn't know.
That being the
Plus
case,
the question is, why was it commissioned in the first place?
but I guess that raises some other issues. I mean, obviously there's a process to go through with regards to why the building was closed down. Was it decommissioned, I guess? And was that due to safety reasons? I guess, just to your point, Councillor Taylor, I certainly agree with the fact that there are some major problems with the building, but it doesn't matter whether you just do cosmetic repairs and that. Is that going to satisfy an insurer that they're going to insure their building as far as liability and those type of issues are concerned? With regards to the reports, I actually congratulate council for going and get those reports to identify those concerns that you have and ratepayers are going to have, because obviously when you initially asked for the $50,000, you weren't sure at the time, so you just plugged the figure based on your opinion. So at that point in time, we had no idea as a council what that was going to cost. I guess what the report has done is given me and other councillors clarity about what the estimate cost is going to be. That cost hasn't come from council; it's come from an independent report.
Mr. Mayor, that report was commissioned.
Can you just allow me to
clarification?
finish?
That was commissioned before I asked any question.
I didn't finish. Yeah.
No, I'm just going through what the process would normally be. So there is a lot of discussion about whether the building can be saved or should be saved. My point is, it doesn't matter whether we spend $120,000 to repair the building. The estimates initially were, we had no idea because we didn't have a report, anything to gauge that on. And at the short notice that we had, we put $50,000 in the budget. Obviously, that may not be enough. But what the report does show is that there appears to be some major structural issues with the building, And I guess the question is, regardless if you take the sentimental out of the building itself, is that good ratepayers' money being spent to do the building up, if so, for what purpose? Obviously, if you want it done up, it's going to have to be done up to a standard that anybody can use it, not just on the ad hoc basis if somebody wants to go have a barbecue there.
Councillor Mellowes, can I answer that? See, what's happened here, this has been drawn into a corner which will get the emotions going in the community that it's all about this amenity block.
Yeah.
It was about the field.
Exactly. It was about the
And it was about the weeds, and it was about watering it and having this big green space. That's an appendage over here. Don't lose sight of the fact that it's about that oval and that green space and the condition it's in. That is out there.
To me, that's where I was going to go to. I think. Oh, sorry. There you go. I didn't see you.
The fact of the matter is, it is already and has always been, an asset of this council. We have an obligation and a responsibility to keep it up to a state for usability, and we haven't done that. And we talk about insurances. If somebody was to go there and play Frisbee and hurt themselves because we haven't done that fact, then it comes into those insurance pieces. So I think it's not new. It's not a new expenditure for ratepayers. It has always been an expenditure for the last 50 or more years. So our obligation is, as a council, is to rectify the fact that it has gone into disrepair. Otherwise, we need to put a fence up around the entire paddock so it can't be used, because the obligation is on us. And I'm surprised that, and I don't speak for farmers markets, and I'll just point that out, but I would have thought that particular precinct would be ideal for them in good weather, when they have farmers markets and all that. Look, it's got everything there. It's got electricity. It's flat, and potentially in the future it might have a usable toilet.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. I suppose if the field is going to be spent money on, that means people will go and use it. So I suppose the reason why, I know I used to train there with Orange City, that's where they had 4 grades, so we had 1 in each corner. Those lights back then were some of the best lights that Orange had.
They still are.
And Hawks used to train there. So the ground deteriorated over those years, and now it's got to the state where it is. And then we've gone and spent money on the new cricket nets. I suppose if we really wanted to have, as long as we can get the ground suitable for people wanting to come and play, we might then go after funding to do the amenities block.
Could I make a couple of points?
Yeah, I was actually going to summarise, Mr. Maunder. Look, and I understand the debate, and it's not for us to debate. I think Project Perry Oval, my understanding, came from Councillor Taylor during the budget process, talking about how it had been let go. 50,000 was allocated, and really the 3 elements are the surface, the irrigation, and the toilet block. The staff have ticked a box, in a sense, and had a look at the toilet block and are providing information on that. I think an inspection would be a great idea. I think it says in the report on page 197, the irrigation and I think that's referred to is going in the new financial year. We need to work on the field. So I welcome an inspection.
Question. If it's an asset, so would asset renewal, is that what this comes under? Because it is our asset. If it's gone downhill a bit, shouldn't there be money in our budget to renew what we own?
That's the point, Jace.
And that is the point towards Project Perry Oval.
Could I just make a couple of points, if I may, Mr. Mayor? So I agree entirely about the ground condition. It is used currently. Bloomfield train there every week. Sims Junior Rugby League have trained there in the last couple of weeks. I've used it to train touch football teams myself. Numerous soccer teams. It's used by cricket. It's used by various people. So there is a fair bit of use. No one that's used it, and I'm one of them recently, disagree with the condition of the surface. So that's why the irrigation is important. That work is proceeding, so we get water to the field. So it's about a $30,000 investment in Perry Oval to get those fields up. So that will address the field. It is interesting around the demand for amenities building. In my time at council, and I've never had a request for the amenities at Perry, irrespective of that use. So they can be separated. So there's a matter for council to decide whether we actually need amenities there or not. There's lots of fields and open space that don't have amenities, but the block is there, so that they can be separated. And the only other thing that I want to advise council of is that you'll be aware that we received some funding under Resources for Regions, and a report's coming to council next week to consider what that's allocated to. One of the projects up for consideration in that grant allocation from the state government is to update those amenity buildings at Perry Oval. They're obviously decisions for council. So just some broad information on its current usage and the works required to get it up to state.
Thanks, Mr. Moore.
Sorry.
Last question.
So the $30,000 for the irrigation, that's not coming out of...
Yes, it is.
$50,000.
Yes, it is.
Anyhow,
We got irrigation in
we're
there,
going
mate.
to review that. So, look, I'm going to put the amendment, first of all, that this is deferred, review, and we'll have an inspection up there. All in favour? Against? Comes a motion. All in favour? Thank you. .5 is 5.4 is the tourism and event marketing.
5.3, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, skip one.
233.
Yeah, sorry, 5.3 progress report, operational plan 2019-2020.
Recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Wonderful. Move Councillor Nugent, seconded Councillor Munro. All in favour? Please. Thank you. 5.4 is the tourism and event marketing. 255.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
I'll second recommendation, Mr Mayor.
The mover, who was the mover? Councillor Whitten, seconder. Councillor Nugent. I asked Mr Waddell to get this together for me because one concern I had that perhaps in some areas we may be duplicating our effort. It's be transparent in actually what we're doing, and knowing what we're doing is where we're spending substantial amounts of ratepayers' money. And I think this sets it out pretty well to be aware in those areas. And then I think the other thing that I'd encourage councillors to do is, knowing that we're investing the money in those organisations, that we make sure we're getting a bang for our buck half of ratepayers. All in favour?
Question, $100,000 for Orange 360.
It's currently on exhibition, and will come off in a couple of weeks, Nick. Yep.
Okay, all in favour? No one. Thank you. We'll now look at item 6, which is the closed meeting. The Chief Executive Officer will advise the Council if any written submissions have been received relating to any item advertised for consideration by a closed meeting of Orange City Council. In accordance with the Local Government Act of 1993 and the Local Government Act General, Regulation 2005, in the opinion of the Chief Executive Officer, the following business is of a kind as referred to in Section 10A, brackets 2 of the Act, and should be dealt with in a confidential session of the Council meeting closed to the press and public.
There are no written submissions, Mr Mayor.
Right, we have item 6.1 is 2019-2020 water sewerage charges, 9 to 17 Edward Street, Orange, and the reason for confidentiality. This item is classified as confidential under the provisions of Section 10A, brackets 2, brackets B, the personal hardship of any resident or ratepayer. 6.2 is a lease of hangar at the Orange Airport. The reason for confidentiality is this item is classified as confidential under the provisions of Section 10A, brackets 2, brackets C, information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the Council is conducting or proposes to conduct business.